Welcome to the Biblical Leadership at Work podcast. I'm your host, Jason Woodard. On this month's show, you will meet Chad Brignac, an entrepreneur, author, and a transformationist who's redefining what it means to lead with purpose. With over 30 years of experience across industries like construction, tech, and culinary arts, Chad's ventures include Pathways Group, Food and Flavor, and Construction Ops Software. But his deepest impact comes through something less tangible: his commitment to self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and compassionate leadership. Chad's story is one of transformation, moving from pragmatism to empathy, from authority to influence. And today you'll hear how he's helping leaders create thriving workplaces, healthy families, and lives of true fulfillment. And this is one that you won't want to miss. So brother, Chad, thanks for being on the show, man. I can't wait to talk to you and have our audience get to know you better.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so let's go back, go through kind of a resume, background. How is the Lord taking you kind of from your education on through where you're at? I know you and I have talked a little bit before, and it's a fascinating story. You've done a lot of different things. So let's give a brief overview of that.
Yeah, I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Entrepreneurship started at the age 15 in my parents' driveway when I was tinting windows, an art that I taught myself before it was available to learn how to do it on YouTube. And that just led me to always want to start new businesses, do new things. By the age of 19, I had my own construction company building residential homes. So fast forward through the last 3 decades, most of that was spent in the construction industry, bridges, hotels, hospitals, in all different levels of leadership: VP, COO, superintendent, senior superintendent, general manager. And the culinary side was more an inspirational piece to learn cooking techniques, to learn ways to maintain sauces and keep things together, which ironically became the subtitle to our book, Creating Your Family's Secret Sauce, as it related to learning how to make different liquids mend together with the perfect balance, temperature, and timing. So that's always fascinating how God wove everything into this perfect piece of art that I totally messed up for a lot of years. At the beginning, I was not saved. I gave my life to the Lord in 1998, was still an entrepreneur, had nine businesses over that 30-year span, plus in and out of different leadership roles in construction, and just trying to find my way into something that really gave me purpose, but it was never my defined purpose until I came to a place of healing and restoration, which has been a journey over the last 2 years. And that process began as part of writing the book, Blend, Don't Break.
So your foundation of your career, Chad, was construction, right? It sounds like you spent a lot of years doing that. But then you got into culinary arts. Was that like a passion, a hobby that kind of turned into a business as well?
Yeah, it gave me great inspiration to vision different things, just playing with culinary arts. And it came from being a picky eater and being inspired and my palate igniting on what was a food tour for us. And I just became curious. So I spent time in the culinary arts. Did some catering, different things like that. Never did launch it into a full-fledged restaurant, but I have envisioned a restaurant group coming forth still on the back end of all of this. Right now, my focus is on this transformation and personal development, something that I speak into every business that I'm a part of now. And the Lord had built teams around me to take these other ventures and give them fuel from my passion and my vision of what it can be. But I have to walk and live in my divine purpose, which I've discovered at the age of 50. And most people don't discover that their entire life. And it would be wonderful if people would start to discover it early in life, because it puts you on a platform to speak boldly for Christ.
Yeah.
Once
you have that confidence. Yeah. Once you know that you're doing what God has called you and wired you to do, it gives you a different level of confidence and peace. Hey, tell us a little bit about your family, Chad. Like, where are you from? And children, marriage, what's that look like?
Yeah, so I'm from a little town called Narco in South Louisiana. It's named after New Orleans Refinery Company. So there's a large shell plant in that town. And I grew up there my whole life. My wife is from Metairie. My first wife was also from Narco. She passed away at the age of 30. I was 28 years old. We had 2 young kids, 1 and 4 when she passed, and I got remarried roughly a year and a half later. And I married my wife now, who had 2 older kids. When we met, they were 10 and 15, so we're a blended family.
Yeah.
Which is the reason and the story behind Blend Don't Break, creating your family's secret sauce. It's written from the heart of our blended family. We transitioned to a town called Mandeville, which where we're from, it's called across the lake. We cross over Lake Pontchartrain, so you live on the North Shore now instead of the South Shore. So all those things, God transitioned us to Oklahoma for 8.5 years. In 2019, after my wife had recovered her mom from some medical stuff and some mild strokes, we transitioned her back home for Thanksgiving that year. And 4 days later, my wife had a massive stroke.
Your current wife?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
She's 5.5 years past now, a warrior, stroke warrior. She survived. She is doing well. She has left side ailments. I used the word pass, and I want to clarify. She didn't pass away. We're 5 years beyond it.
Yeah.
And she is doing well. She has a tremendous heart. Her heart actually led us to our nonprofit foundation, which is Pathways to Triumph, a stroke recovery foundation that we started this year. And it's to help people through the recovery journey. So there's a lot of things going on in our life, but my purpose is really helping people to find self-awareness, grow in emotional intelligence, not from a place of just knowing how to manage your emotions, but to actually have a true transformation that allows you to respond with the right emotions and operate and walk in compassionate leadership.
And I definitely want to talk more about that whole idea of moving from authority to influence, because I know you have quite a journey in your leadership that God has led you through. But I want to ask a little bit about, you lost a wife when you were in your late 20s. And then your current wife had a stroke. I mean, how did God use those super difficult situations to just strengthen you spiritually? Like, were you a believer when your first wife passed away yet?
Yes, I had given my life to Christ roughly 2 years prior, and she gave her life to Christ right about a year prior to her passing. I write a workshop that I'm working on called Perseverance. And it's about how Scripture says, by the testing of your faith, you have an opportunity to grow in perseverance.
Yeah.
If you look at what it says, a lot of people say by the testing of your faith, you will grow in perseverance. No, you will not automatically grow. Your response determines that growth.
You have an opportunity.
And how you respond, you will grow. That's God's heart. That's his intent. That's what he wants for us, but we have to take the choice to respond properly.
Yeah.
And a moment is fresh in my mind. It's standing outside the hospital just minutes after they pronounced my wife. My dad came outside to love on me, and he said, "Chad, I don't know how you do it." And I said, "Dad, you know what? I'll never ask God why." That didn't come from me. That came from a place of his inner work in me. That was the one thing that I would say that I got right in my Christian walk for probably 15 to 18 years, because I messed so many other things up.
Yeah.
And it's not that asking God why is a problem. The issue is, if you get stuck on the why, you will be stuck in that moment. If you get stuck on God answering for me what I want to know, you will get stuck in God trying to answer what it is that you want to know, that you will never fully comprehend anyway. So my approach in that moment was, okay, God, what next? Not why, what next?
Yeah.
And if you have a moment of why, I would encourage anyone to take that why and turn it into what next, because God can spend a lot of time trying to heal us, trying to understand why, or we can shorten that time in focusing on what he has for us next. And that moment in my life developed a certain level of perseverance that I was able to accept my second wife having a stroke, recognizing that God is fully in charge, God is fully in command, and my faith has been built to so high relative to a health issue that I was grateful that I didn't lose my second wife. I
Yeah.
was grateful for what we had. And that opportunity brought us closer together in our marriage than we had ever been.
Yeah. I think, Chad, when you're talking about that moment outside the hospital, and it reminds me of Job, the book of Job, towards the end when he was asking God why. And as you said, I think, people will ask why. That's going to be, I think, natural for us, but God didn't tell him why. He didn't answer why. And in the end, Job realized that wasn't really the question that he should be asking at that time. So no, that's amazing, man. I appreciate you being willing to share that, because I think God leads us through difficult situations. And I can't think of a much more difficult situation than losing a spouse or a child. And we have the opportunity in those situations to grow and persevere. And it's not going to automatically happen, as you said, even for believers. That could really turn them into a dark place. But yeah, and now, in the end here, before we wrap up, we'll give a chance to people to get to know where they can reach out to you, because maybe I've got people that are listening that have faced or are going through a dark time like that, and yeah, you could be an encouragement to them for sure. So
Yeah, I've come to learn that we don't understand each other's situations, but there's moments of that we can relate from our own perspective, and it's that puts the relate in relationship.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, Chad, let's talk about this transformation that you've gone through as a leader. I really love this. I went through a similar transformation. I don't know, 15 years ago, I think, in my leadership. But I want to hear about yours, even as a believer. It wasn't that when you became a believer, you changed as a leader right away, right? That's something God had to work in you in the next many years to develop these different mindsets of how you relate to others, if I recall from our prior discussions.
Yes, so I would say even as a believer, I was a strong manager. I was a great builder, but a poor leader.
Yeah.
And I can look at when I led well, my mouth was closed. And I use an example in the construction industry. When I would walk up on the job, the workers would go, "Here comes Chad, stop cursing." I never asked them to stop cursing. I never said that there was taboo or there was anything wrong with cursing around me, but my life, whenever I was correcting, molding, shaping, managing, or even leading, because there was moments of leading, I didn't use foul language. And that influenced them in a way that transitioned their life, that transformed their life. And I didn't ask for it.
No.
I just simply lived it. So many other places I messed that up with my tone, my volume, my criticism, my ridicule, all of those things that I had to walk through. And I realized that it came from a place of brokenness. It came from a place of insecurity. It came from a place of me not being confident in who I was in Christ. I mentioned to my wife in a conversation just the other day, we have to disconnect our value and our worth from what we do, and we have to reconnect it to what he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we will actually accomplish more when we make that connection with Christ and who we are in him than we will ever accomplish when our value and our worth is associated to what we can actually pull off or what we can accomplish.
Yeah.
And that was my story. That was my journey. And it unfortunately came through moments after the stroke. I have a moment 15 years ago where I said to one of my pastors, "I don't even like people." And in the moment, it was truth that came out that was revelation to even me. And God was like, "Well, how can you lead people if you don't like people?" And God began to work in me 15 years ago. Over the course of that year, it was after the stroke, after my head came up above the water, about a year and a half after the stroke, I looked around and I said, I can see many things that have been built, but I see destruction in the lives around me. And I was like, is that the legacy you want to leave? And it was a resounding no, of course. So what I did in my moment is I said, okay, in this moment, I am going to say I am responsible for all of the destruction I see, whether I was or I wasn't. I was willing to take ownership of everything broken. And it was in that moment that God began to do a mighty work in me, because I came to a place of vulnerability. I came to a place of being willing to be hurt, willing to be trampled on, willing to be disrespected, and none of that was going to impact my value or my worth. And that was really my story.
Yeah. So talk about where God has taken you in your leadership, and let's get practical on some things, Chad. And like, how did your approach change, and how did that impact your ability to influence others?
Yeah. So I'll just start with my family. Instead of telling my older children and my wife what they're supposed to do, my conversation started to become, what do you see in me that I could do different to help you become your best you? And it didn't matter the answer. I was not going to have a reaction to it.
You weren't going to defend it. That'd be the worst thing.
I wasn't going
right?
to defend it. I wasn't going to step up in pride. I was going to let my ego and my pride be crushed.
Yeah.
And one moment was with my oldest son and said, what was I missing that I didn't have enough influence in your life, that you felt I was a controlling person or the only authority? And he said, you lacked emotional intelligence.
He said that. Wow. How old was he
he was in his mid-20s.
Okay. That's pretty mature.
And he said that. I didn't just do that right away. I created the space for that question to be asked and for him to be confident enough to answer it.
Yeah.
Now, he had done his own self-work to be confident enough as well, but I was willing to take that answer. And I didn't react to it other than a simple thank you, I love you. And I took that back, and that began a journey in my life. Recently, my grandson, who is now 10, influences my life on how he loves people, his kindness, his compassion, I believe if I saw Jesus as a kid, it would look just like my grandson. That's how compassionate it is. That's how loving he is. And it doesn't matter what someone says to him. He first thinks of that person before he has any reaction. And that has influenced how I see people.
Yeah.
So what's practically changed for me is in every conversation, in every moment, positive or negative, I am looking for opportunities for me to grow.
Yeah.
And I am putting aside my opinion so God can reveal to me some truth. That's what's changed for me practically.
I think I love that example that here you have I have two granddaughters and they're 2 and 6. I think they're such a blessing, but you look at your 10-year-old grandson and you're being influenced by this gift that God has given him. I mean, has a special disposition that'll probably, if Lord willing, he will be able to use it for God's glory. But that's great. I mean, you look around at people that we can learn from. And what I hear you saying is, if we're humble enough and, set our own pride away and look around and see what we can learn from others, there are characteristics in others that we can see that they are, more strong in, more godly in, believers that we know, but even some unbelievers, right? We learn from those that just do things very well and are allow ourselves to be influenced by them. That vulnerability piece that you talk about, I can remember the first time that ever really I understood it, I think, at least mentally. I certainly didn't change overnight. I was reading a book by Patrick Lencioni, who I love. He's a great author. And this book was The 5 Temptations of a CEO. And it just talks about one of the temptations is, I'll paraphrase, but not being willing to be vulnerable and let our guard down and allow trust to start being built with other people. And at the time I had a mentor who I was working with who happened to be also talking to me about that. It was obviously God at work in multiple ways, trying to teach me, because I'm pretty thick-headed. So I think you and I probably gone through some of the same things, that God's got to hit us kind of hard over the head to get through that. So now So you wrote a book. I want to talk a little bit about your book and your passion and how you're trying to work to help other people, leaders and families with this kind of change in mindset. So let's talk a little bit about your book and the concept there.
Yeah, so the book we put out in 2024 is Blend Don't Break, Creating Your Family's Secret Sauce, co-authored with my wife, and our 4 children actually have an interview chapter in the book, each of them do, telling their version of our home as a blended family. What we set out to write to help blended families, and we know it will help blended families, God chose to write to help all families, all marriages, all pre-marriages. In his infinite wisdom, he put out a book that will help anyone in any relationship dynamic that there is. And I would encourage everyone to read it. Yes, I'm partial and I'm biased to a book that I wrote, but the Holy Spirit wrote this book through us. I've read this book 5 times, and all 5 times it's changed my life again and again.
I love
It's
that.
amazing what he put pen to paper, and it comes from a place of us getting most of this wrong, and God showing us in the process of writing this book, just from being in a place of a humbled heart, being in a place of vulnerability, being in a place of openness for him to work. He showed us things, the reverse script of what we could do. And what we love about creating your family's secret sauce is to make a great sauce, you have to first understand the ingredients. You have to understand everything that's going into it. You have to understand what it's made of, its makeup, and how you can get that to blend without breaking. Well, a family is equally unique. A business is unique that way, and churches are unique that way. We actually are going to turn this into a series and where we'll write Blend Don't Break, Creating Your Business's Secret Sauce, Blend Don't Break, Creating Your Church's Secret Sauce. Because all of these people come together, and what it is the uniqueness of individual. Your primary ingredients are people. And when you try to add everything else into it without first understanding people and each individual person, it will break.
Yeah.
And that whole thing came full circle. That was not the subtitle when we set out to write this book. God just put that all together, and he tied it into the food journey and the food adventures that we've been on, the culinary arts knowledge and stuff that he brought to me. He brought that into their full circle, which was totally unexpected. And that landed in the final chapter, the closing, which created the subtitle.
Yeah.
And that book, that authorship of that book, and the reading of the book 5 times over the last 2 years is really what brought me to this place of what I teach, why I teach it, and why I live it. And God told me in order to teach it, you have to first embody it.
Yeah.
And he broke me.
I love what you said about whether you've read it 5 times and learned from it. That's super cool. But the fact that, you admit that, like, we did a lot of things wrong, and this is how we got to where we are by learning, and allowing God to work in our lives, and especially in a blended family. I grew up in a blended family, and it's tough. I mean, I love my siblings that I grew up with, absolutely dearly love them, and but it was tough as an adolescent. I was kind of middle school age when we came together, and that's tough. But it's all about relationships, right? So, like you said, the thought around writing this book in a series based on business culture and relationships and church unity. I mean, that's Christ prayed for the unity of the body. One of his last prayer. It's so important, and it's so easily upended through pride and through being easily offended over silly minor little things. But it just amazes me over and over again how quickly it can happen, and how easy, Satan can allow that destruction to come into a relationship, into the church, into a family, into a business that it's pride. It's, lack of vulnerability. It's, just being easily offended, which really is a pride issue. So, well, that's good. We'll put a link in the show notes for people to check that out. Hey, Chad, what are your spiritual disciplines? I get a little personal here. And like, what do you do to stay close to the Lord on a daily, weekly basis? Like, what's your routine there?
So you'll continue to hear me say over this 2-year journey, and it's important I go back to November of 2023. God put us in a city. We're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana now. God put us here, and in the moment of landing here, leading up to November, many times I would tell God, "Okay, I'm accepting being here, but in 6 months I'll be there. In a year I'll be there. In 3 months I'll be there." And God's like, "Would you let go of where you're gonna grow and plant where I have you?" And in November, I surrendered that moment, and I call it my road to Damascus. Because while I was saved, I lived a life that I was always reliant on myself. I heard from God. I knew God gifted me. I knew God gave me talents, but I would say, "Thank you, Lord. I got it from here."
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wouldn't say those words, but that was my actions.
yeah.
And on that day, November of 2023, on what I call my road to Damascus, God shone a light on me and said, "I am now going to be in charge of your life, and you are going to let me." And I surrendered my life to him in that moment. I had been
Yeah.
saved 25 years prior. I surrendered my life to him in that moment. And I gave up my agenda. I gave up my desires, my wants, my self-reliance, all of that I gave to him. 6 months after that, I learned a discipline that I could walk with the Lord. I had been taught prayer closet. I had been taught prayer time, read the Bible in a year, spend this much time in worship, spend this much time in prayer, this much time in the word. And I got caught up in the religion of Christianity. And I tried to fulfill those religious things, and I failed. My walk with the Lord was very weak on a daily basis because it never fit what I wanted to do. It never fit, not what I wanted to do, because that's what I just gave up, but what worked for me. And I discovered at a prayer night at church one night, I got up and I went walk, and my prayer voice just blew up. I was saying prayers in ways I had never said them before. I had felt his presence in ways I'd never felt it before. And he spoke to me, he said, "Chad, if walking works for you, walk with me every day."
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I walk with the Lord every day for an hour to 2 hours every day. I don't put a clock on it. I put in his presence on it, and I do worship, and I listen to the word, and I pray, and I take notes, and I talk to my phone to take notes, and I go back and I study them later.
Nice.
So every week I review what the Lord has given me throughout the week. I turn those into articles and blogs and things like that every day. And then, of course, we're always at church every week. We're at prayer every Wednesday. But my transition and my transformation in life really started to explode when I began to walk with the Lord on a consistent basis. And I moved from religion to relationship.
That's interesting. I have a friend who was actually on the podcast a couple of years ago. He's a runner, and he says that's where he does most of his praying when he's running. He runs every day, like miles every day.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think I'd never heard of that. But if that's where you're growing close to the Lord and that's where you're in commune with him, that's great.
Yeah, my mind is fixed on the Lord,
Yeah,
finally, in my Christian walk.
that's
That's
great.
that's the difference. When I go to bed at night, I'm thinking of Jesus. When I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking of Christ. When I'm going throughout the day, it's, what do you say, Christ? What do you think, Christ? And I have reached this place that even in moments of what would be 911, am I in a place where my instinct will say God before I dial the phone?
Yeah.
And when you're living there, you're living in relationship with him, where he is your primary source in relationship. And that is where an investment made, and God will meet us wherever it works for us. So if you can You clearly can't drive and close your eyes without running into something
Right.
and that be your time. I hear people say my time's in the car and all of that, and maybe that works for you. God can be with us any place we are. I don't close my
Yeah.
eyes when we walk, but every few minutes for a second I'll do, because I feel led by the Lord to close my eyes. So I'm at risk to run into something even while I'm walking or step in a hole. But it works for me. And sitting in a prayer closet and flipping through the pages of the word wasn't working for me. I tried it year after year and I failed. And God wants to meet us in a place where it works for us. It's not
Yeah.
saying, hey, God, this is my way, come join me. I'm not. It's our wiring, it's our uniqueness, it's our
Yeah.
design. He put Adam and Eve in the garden and he walked with them in the garden. He didn't say, come over to this corner of the garden and I'll meet you there and spend an hour there. And what it did was, this transition in my life has now caused me to be mentally and emotionally in his presence all throughout the day.
Yeah. That's good. I'll tell you, for a long time, I tried to spend time in the word and prayer at night, and it was never effective. That's not my time a day to do that. And over years, I've realized for me, it's morning, early morning, an hour in the morning when it's still quiet and nobody's up and it's dark. And I put on some instrumental worship music in my headphones, and that's just me and the Lord. And I relate to what you're saying, because it finally was like, this is different. It was finally different. And it wasn't just checking a box. I did this, I got this done. It's really meaningful and deep, and it's beautiful. So no, I appreciate you sharing that. That is cool to hear that, how God's working in your life on that. Hey, Chad, I want to talk a little bit again about leadership. What would you say is like your core leadership principle that you go back to all the time? Like, what's the main thing for you when it comes to leadership?
Compassionate leadership is broad, but that's really what it's about. It's from the model of Jesus. But for me, it's real success is inward peace, not outward performance or position. That would be the core of what resonates with me, that I let a career and a path and a journey control every voice in my life, every action in my life. I treated my family like another project and another job. I treated the drive home to and from work like it was an assignment that I had to check off at the end of the day, and accomplished a lot of things in my businesses, but failed in the people area. And my people, I call it a people compass, was broken. My people compass was way off. It had cracked screens and misplaced dials. It was terrible. But really, inward peace is the true measure of success.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with outward performance or position.
Yeah, it's putting the relationships and the people before the task, right? Because you're a task-driven guy. I can sense that already. I am too, and it's easy for me, at least, to get focused on the task, no matter what the relationship is. And God has grown me a lot in that. It's like, slow down. That can't be your number one priority all the time. It's how you do things matters greatly as a believer, as a leader, as a child of Christ. Just how we do things, not just what we do, but how we do those things matters greatly. When you talk a little bit about this, but when I hit on this again, when you were a younger leader, what was it that you struggled the most with as you look back? Like, what were the things that you really struggled with?
Giving space for people to be heard. And, a lot of leaders, I believe, struggle with this, that everything. I used to have this mindset, if you tell me before, it's a reason, and I can help you with reasons, but if you tell me after the fact, it's an excuse, and I don't want to hear any of those. And it's putting an expectation and an assumption on people that they are, in a way, wired the way that I'm wired, in a way, think the way that I think. It's putting an expectation that they're going to do a job the way that I expected them to do it, when I didn't give them opportunity to learn the job the way they would do it. And that was probably my biggest thing, is I would silence people the minute it looked like excuses to me. And while there may have been a moment to say, all right, let's get back to that right now. Let's do this because there's a concrete truck just 30 minutes away. I never went back to those conversations to say, okay, let me help you unpack that.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
Yeah. Yep. 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 No, I understand that. Yeah. It was like, I've been told before that, there was times in my career when I would get it done, but I'd leave a trail of dead bodies in my wake. We'd get it done, but and I'm not proud of that. And God took me through a time when he broke me of that, and it was pretty painful, but I'm glad that he did. Hey, I always like to ask people that I have on, who do you follow, read, podcast, listen to help you stay sharp as a leader? Like, what are some books or things that you listen or read or listen to help you, just stay on top of your game as a leader? Who do you like?
Yeah, one of my most important is John Maxwell. I was in the first room when he launched the John Maxwell team. So I'm a certified speaker with the John Maxwell team. I can teach 6 of his books. That's always been an inspiration to me. It's the honesty about his life that's been inspired to me. There was a season in which I just wanted to be like John Maxwell, and I had to come into my own and realize that I had a different message. I had a different purpose. God was going to use me in a different way, but he remains that person that I look to. We have a lot of the same thinking, but we come at it from a couple different ways. But Patrick Lencioni, you mentioned, Renee Brown, Craig Rochelle, those people is who I follow, who I track with. John Gordon is another one. I love his positive message that he talks about, the message about positivity. And there's just so many, but those are probably my primary ones that I follow and keep connected with.
John Maxwell was transformational for me when I first became interested, learning to be a leader, learning to lead well. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I remember reading it.
Yes.
And that would have been in like the late 90s, I think, when I first read that. So I was just yesterday at a meeting with a nonprofit that I'm on the board of, and we were having kind of an off-site for the day, and somebody shared a devotional that was from a John Maxwell book. So he's prolific. God's used him a lot, and broadly for many, many decades. You had a young leader who came to you, and maybe you've had this before with children or somebody that that asked you for advice because they got their first chance in a formal leadership role in their profession or even in a ministry setting. What advice would you give them?
The main thing that I teach young leaders, and even leaders that I believe have tried to control too much in their space, is what's actually in our book, which is why we believe it's part of a business program that I'm going to teach. And it's the greenhouse effect, that you are responsible to create an environment where people can be nourished and people can be grown. You're not responsible to control their growth, and you're not responsible to stunt their growth or for their development. If you create the right environment, you will create the right opportunity for growth.
Yeah. I like that greenhouse effect. I love doing that too as a leader, seeing people on my team grow. We've got, I work in manufacturing, and we've got apprentices. Now we have other people who have new into team leadership roles or supervisor roles, and just supporting them, right? Watch them struggle. And I don't want to say fail, but fail a little bit and have rough days, and just making sure as a leader, though, that we're there to support them and encourage them and give them guidance. Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, for me, that's been the most rewarding thing. And that's an area that I've grown in, like you talked about, more than the accomplishments, the metrics, the objectives. Those are all good and fun to hit. But when you see people develop, and you had a chance to be a part of that, God's used you in their lives. That's stuff that you think you remember, and I think they remember for decades. There's people that I've had the opportunity to help them grow 15, 20 years ago, and we still have a connection, and a friendship. And same for people who gave me a shot, all those years ago, who gave me a shot and helped develop me and saw something in me that others didn't, or even I didn't. That's a lot more impactful. It's a lot more long lasting. And I think as leaders, especially believers, we're called to strive to have that kind of influence on others. So, Chad, let's talk a little bit about what are you doing right now? For your newest entrepreneurial focus, and what thing has God called you to do right now? What's that area?
Yeah, so 3 businesses right now: Construction Ops Software Co., which is a tech company focused on construction software to help that industry be more user-friendly and more robust on the back end. Pathways Group, which is where my Chad Brignac brand, my wife's brand, is, where we teach leadership, we write, we author books. And then Pathways to Triumph, a stroke recovery foundation, which is our nonprofit to help people after that 30 to 45 day mark when the hospital care ends, you transition home, recovery really begins, and you're left with 2 days of outpatient therapy and trying to navigate this life on your own at home. That's the other thing. For Chad Brignac, I am in a coaching program right now to develop and improve my public speaking. So I am looking for 20 to 25 stages in 2026.
Okay.
And I am working on some course content on those topics that we talked about: perseverance, identity and vulnerability, blend, don't break theory, the bend, don't break philosophy. I didn't drill down the name yet, but I'm working on some things where it talks to all dynamics of life. And then I got another talking topic called eggshells, which is what my family walked on, including myself. And how do we create an environment where there are no longer any eggshells? And in that, I do use a tree analogy a lot, and potted plants in the greenhouse, and roots being severed when you go from one position to the next. So that is really my passion right now, is how can I get more public facing conversations, more public facing disciplines out there from what I have walked through my speaking engagements. And I just finished the rough draft of my second book called The Visionary Storm, which is talking about the mind of the visionary and how chaotic they are in the rooms when they just blast ideas everywhere, and people have to navigate this journey with them. And we help teams on how to navigate it. We help the visionary gain awareness, and we introduce what we call a strategist that is really the funnel to harness the visionary mind and make it deliver the most powerful results that it can. In 2026, I'll be writing a book called Let's Get Naked. Patrick Lencioni wrote a book that has the word naked in it as well. I'll actually be reading that book before I author mine to see if there's any insights that I can pull in, but mine really comes from my life journey, and it's called Living a Life of Vulnerability, Openness, and Unshakable Confidence.
Yeah. That's good. Man, you got a lot going on. I love it.
Yes, and it's fun.
That's good. It's funny because you talked about being an entrepreneur since you were 15, and I think there's a streak of entrepreneurism. So I don't know if that's a word, but in my family, my grandfather was one. My dad is kind of skipped me. Now my oldest son is one. And I remember my oldest son, man, he was doing lemonade stand when he was like, I don't know, 8, 9 years old. I was like, this kid's, it's what he wanted to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was always a dream for him that God planted in his heart. So that's amazing. A couple last questions before we wrap up. What do you hope will be your legacy, Chad, when God calls you, into a retirement, but, away from a full-time professional career, or even as he calls you home, what do you hope will be your legacy?
Yeah. I'm going to step back just a minute, because the entrepreneurial spirit, I have now realized that I can't operate outside of my purpose. And my purpose is divine, and my purpose is to help people to become more self-aware, emotional intelligence, and walk in compassionate leadership. Help people to make small internal shifts that leaves a lasting outward result. That is my purpose. So in every venture, I have to realize my lane is right there.
Yeah.
And
no matter
that's
what,
different.
whether it's,
Yeah, that is different from my past entrepreneurial journeys, that I have to recognize that that is my lane. That is my contribution to everything that we embark on.
Yeah.
And that brings me to what my legacy would be is I lived my first 50 years for something that gave me purpose. And I will live the rest of my life in my purpose. And there is a big difference. So if I leave a legacy, the biggest legacy that I could leave is that my life impacted my family, my friends, and my network to find their true purpose.
Yeah. That's great. I think it reminds me of, developing your own like mission statement. Like, what is God called you to do, and understanding that and staying focused on it, even across, you just named 3 different businesses that are pretty different: software, consulting. These are really different businesses, but all along there you have that focused mission that you want to stay on task with. So I really respect that. What are some ways that what's the best way for people to get a hold of you, man? I mean,
The best way to reach me is through my website, chadmbrignac.com.
All right. Yeah, we'll have a link to that as well as your book. And you said you're looking for some speaking engagements for 2026. So you'll be sure to reach out to Chad if you want to put him in front of a group to talk about leading in a way that's with vulnerability and love and compassion for others. I think that's come out very clearly. And I would say that you're probably not the only leader that we're engaging with today who has gone through that, that gone from task-oriented, people are a means to an end, to focused on the people in the relationship are the means, that those relationships that we have. So, well, brother, I appreciate you being on today. Love your story. Love to hear how God has used some difficult situations through your life to grow you and to glorify himself, and the relationship that you have now with him and your family. Yeah, that's great. I love hearing these things. It's so good to see what God is doing in another person's life and a family clear across the country, way down south in New Orleans. So thank you for being on today, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's great. When I started writing the book, God said, I'm going to make you a vulnerable author. And I fought with him a little bit about that. And now we're at a place where he's just made my life completely vulnerable. So I love sharing. I love being a part of it. It's not about me. I hope that our conversation today challenges people to look within themselves and find the opportunity for God to show them something that needs to be transformed according to his will.
Yeah. No, I do too. That's the goal here, is for people to grow as leaders, but grow closer to the Lord and grow in sanctification. So thank you for being on, and thank you to my listeners. Appreciate you tuning in again. Be sure to join us next month as we meet another faith-driven leader who's pursuing excellence and influence for God's glory. In the meantime, keep leading with courage and compassion, because impact always begins with insight.